I have expected you. Welcome to BabbleArea Episode 1 about Merlin. I'm BabbleArea, but you can call me Era. So let us start, I would say. Merlin. I should give you the information that it's one of my favorite shows. From all the shows I have seen till now, it is one of my 4 favorite shows. But it does have some issues, which I will all address. Also, I will not look at this as an adaptation of the original legend. I will just look at this as a show. I will not be looking exactly how well they have translated the legend into a show. It's just a show. We will not spare a glance at the legend in this context. Also, I have watched the show mostly in German. I have watched the show on television and on Netflix, mostly in German. I have also seen some episodes in English. So I am not that knowledgeable about the original pronunciation of the names and probably some of the words that they have chosen that may have been translated weirdly into German. Maybe, I don't know. The first thing I want to talk about before I go into anything storyline, character, way, thing, is the title. Because there are some... The title is really confusing me overall, because as we know, the show is called Merlin after the main character, which is fine. Personally, I like it when shows have a title that is a bit more unique and not just the name or one of the names of the main character. But okay. But what is confusing me more is that in English we not only have the title Merlin, but also the title The Adventures of Merlin. While in German, for some reason, they have added behind the Merlin Die neuen Abenteuer, which translates to The New Adventures, which doesn't make as much sense as I would like, because, the title would make sense for like a remake or a sequel or something, but this is just the show, so I would like to understand. I also would like if there would be like one title that we could just use in all languages, but we don't have that, so this is just confusing, and we will just go with Merlin because that's how everyone is referring to it. I also want to praise the opening or the intro, as the fact that we have 2 intros essentially. I like both, and I like it that they changed the intro for... Did they change it for all seasons? They did change it at least, and I really liked it. I like it when shows change the intro according to what will happen in the show in that season. It's work that doesn't need to be done, but it's work that should be done more. About the storyline. I think overall the plot of the show is pretty good, but I do have some issues with the antagonists, and I will get into more detail about them later. If we look at the show overall, I think it's pretty solid and it works well. Personally, I like the first 2 seasons, maybe the first 3 seasons, more than season 4 and 5. But I think it's a good show. It's a good show. Though there were, in my opinion, too many characters that just died, which can work well if it's done and used well, but here not really. Here it just feels like they killed off the characters for the sake of killing off characters, which is the one reason why you shouldn't kill off a character. I don't feel like the killing off of characters has really done that much for the main storyline. So seeing all these characters just die like flies didn't really bring that much to the story itself. So I think it was done not good. Not good at all. And the show feels unfinished. It has 5 seasons, but it feels like there's just 1 season missing. Somewhere in the universe, it may exist, but we don't have it, and we are the ones that need it. Overall, it's just a thing that the whole prophecies said one thing and the show then did the exact opposite. So the ending that we have isn't an ending. It feels like the ending of a season, not the ending of a show. So let me get into the characters. Firstly, obviously, the mains. So firstly, maybe the person which has the name of the show, which named the show. We don't know which way it was. Merlin. I don't know if he had that much development, if I'm honest. Because if I think about Merlin from the first episode and Merlin from the last episode, I do see the same person. Obviously, he learned a lot, but I don't think that he has changed as much as he could have. I think there was development that could have been used that they didn't, which for the main character is somewhat sad that he learned, but he didn't develop as much as he maybe should have. I feel like, I don't know if you have another opinion, you can let me know, but I just see the same young man from the beginning of the show in the end. I think Arthur has a good development. He has a clear storyline that can be followed pretty good, and he essentially just gets a little bit nicer, but I don't know if it was as smooth as it could have been. I don't know, it feels like at some point he just became nice without that much explanation, so I'm not too sure. I don't know when exactly he became as nice as he is, so that's the only thing where I'm a little bit maybe was weird, but he's pretty solid. He has good development. Uther's entire development and reasons for the things he has done is so solid. I really like it. I don't like what he has done, but in the context of the show and with his reasons and everything, I think that he's pretty good. Even though I don't like Uther, I really like how he was handled and his development, and obviously then his demise and death. He wasn't a good human, but he was a good character, and I think as he wasn't a villain, and I think that's also good, that he wasn't portrayed as an antagonist. He was portrayed as an antagonist, but I don't count him as an antagonist because, I don't know, he's just overall pretty solid, so I think he can be a good inspiration for an antagonist, but a character like him as a normal character instead of an antagonist also works pretty well. Morgana is in this list 2 times. But firstly, I will talk mostly about Morgana in the first 2 seasons, I would say. I really like that. It's really interesting that from the get-go she doesn't agree with Uther's views or with his methods of how he handles most things. And as a main character, I would say Morgana is pretty good, but I will get to her in a moment more. If you need an inspiration or a reference for a mentor, use Gaius. He is, as a mentor, I would say pretty standard, but he's a good standard. If you don't know how to handle a mentor, I would say use Gaius as the base reference or as the base building block on which you can put your own ideas and changes and stuff. And I love mentor figures, so I would say it's pretty good. And I don't have much to say besides that he is pretty good as a mentor and overall as a character, so I won't say anything more about him. Gwen is great, but I feel like she's missing something. Around the middle of the show, it feels pretty much like she has lost her personality. I don't really know when exactly it started, but especially towards the later middle of the show, it feels a lot like she's the punching bag, considering how much she went through. She's a sweetheart and I love her, but it feels like there was a part that we didn't get to see that we should have seen. I probably say his name wrong, but I don't know how to say it another way. Kilgharrah. I wrote in my notes. He's such a bitch. I love him. Which is true. I really like him. He's a good character. I like these characters that are older than all other characters and just know a lot, but don't say anything. I don't know why. It's intriguing to me. And I do like that he took the second mentor place something for Merlin, that he taught him a lot. And I'm honestly really surprised that he didn't force Merlin to free him like immediately. But that he waited. I mean, yeah, he has been sitting down there for 20 years, but he could have been freed earlier, but instead he waited longer, which, I mean, it kind of worked, but I don't know. I'm surprised he didn't ask Merlin to free him sooner, but it did make a lot of sense. So overall, I like him. He's good. About the antagonists. Firstly, in my opinion, there are too many. On my list, there are 5 antagonists, and we have 5 seasons, so that's 1 antagonist a season, which doesn't work that well. So firstly, Nimueh. While I was reading up on her, I thought that she was somewhat weak, but as I read about the following antagonists, I noticed she's the strongest of them. She has a solid backstory, a reason, and has connections to people in Camelot, mainly Gaius. And I do think if she would have been there longer, she could have been pretty good. Like, just make her the main villain and everything is fine. Even if she would have disappeared for a while after season 1, like instead of actually being killed, maybe presumably being killed, and then coming back, I think that could have worked really well, but we obviously didn't get that, so she's just the best antagonist that was there for the first season, then she was just gone. Which does annoy me a little bit. Morgause is so forgettable to me. Every time I watch the show and come to around season 2, I always forget that she's there. It's just, she doesn't work that well. She feels really two-dimensional, and I don't really see her motivation overall, and she just feels really weak as a character. Also, I have a hot take, or no, unpopular opinion, or something, call it whatever you want. She should have been a ghost. Hear me out. Hear me out before you go. If she would have been a ghost and influenced Morgana as a ghost, you know, if she would have been a ghost, I think it could have worked a little bit better. And for everyone who has seen Winx Club, I do mean it kinda in the way that it was done there. I just feel like it could have been more believable overall. Because in the show, it's just like Morgause just brainwashed Morgana essentially for a year, and then she was evil. And I just go over to Morgana now, because why not? I like her. I like her as a character. And she had potential as an antagonist. But she wasn't used well because she was brainwashed by Morgause. And it's kind of sad because I think she could have been really, really good as an antagonist if she would have come to the point of hating Uther on her own instead of vanishing for a year and then coming back brainwashed. It feels kind of cheap now that I think about it. If she would have had visible development instead of the season gap that was stretched to a year, I think it could have been more believable overall that she was so against Uther. So it just feels like really just doesn't work well. It just doesn't work well. That's all. That's all I have. Agravaine is the next one on the list, and I have a lot of issues with him. Mainly, listen, I don't hate characters that are made to be hated. In fact, if there's a character that I can only hate, I like that. That's great. It's really hard to make characters like that. But on Agravaine, everything doesn't work because he's just there for 1 season. That's the main problem I have. Firstly, his debut is not working. The fact that he just appears and then is there for a season is really confusing, especially because it is revealed the second scene that he's in that he's evil. I don't want to make more comparisons to other shows, but Agravaine kinda has the same problem as Hawkmoth in Miraculous. And It's weird. I hate him because he is a character to be hated, but I also hate him because he had so much potential that wasn't used. If he would have been there for 2 seasons, and in 1 season, stuff is happening, Camelot is planning stuff that is sabotaged because someone is giving out information, but we don't know who, and Agravaine would just be mildly suspicious. And then we get to know that he's evil. I think that could have worked quite well, but because he was just thrown in for 1 season and then killed randomly, I don't think that worked well. Also, I have Mordred on this list, but the thing is, Mordred, as a character in this show, in the first season, was it the first season where he appeared? I hope it was the first season. In the first season where he appeared, it was interesting. I actually liked that episode. It's a good one. But in season 5, he just doesn't fit in anywhere. And essentially, having him in season 5 could have been nice. But I do think that there were so many characters that were all pretty solid. But because they didn't have the time to develop properly, they just feel unfinished. It's like half-cooked food. So overall, to the antagonists, Nimueh was solid. I'm sad she was just thrown out after 1 season. Morgause kinda made the show worse for me. Morgana could have been good, but wasn't. Agravaine could have been good, but wasn't. And Mordred just didn't fit in at all. Also, my favorite side character, honorable mentions for the characters. Sir Leo is my favorite side character. He has been carrying Camelot for the entire 5 seasons, and that's it. He saved everything. So, let me mention some other stuff that has nothing to do with characters or the storyline, or just barely with characters, but I will just talk about it regardless. For example, the styling. I don't know much about styling. I don't know much about clothes at all. And especially not for the time. But I think the styling is pretty good. I think the styling that was chosen for each character always worked really well. And especially Morgana's green dress is so pretty. It was great. I love the dress. Every time I see it. Every time I see it. It's beautiful. About the sets, I, again, don't really know much about sets and how places looked back then, but I do know that they filmed that at an actual castle, so I would say that gives good points, and I do like most of the locations they built up or chose for filming. And about the camera work, I think the camera work is pretty solid. It's pretty good. Just in the fights is somewhat annoying because the cuts are really fast. Which would be a thing that would be fine, but combined with the heavy shaking of the camera, it just is pain for me. So overall, I think the camera work in calmer moments works pretty good. In fights, it's somewhat annoying to watch, and I also don't think it got better over the seasons. So it is sometimes a pain to watch. The Fazit, the conclusion. I would say, overall, it's a good show, and I do recommend it. And I think that Merlin was the only reason that I watched 2 other shows which were in a similar setting. But I also would have liked if it wouldn't have been so grim. Do you all remember that kitchen scene in the beginning of season 4, where Gwen and Percival fished a chicken? I wish the show would have been a bit more like that. Also, the beginning of the 3rd episode of season 4, a bit more of the lighter parts of life there could have been pretty interesting. Also, I know that it's a show about magic and about Merlin, the greatest sorcerer of the world, I guess, of human history. I don't know. And I know that Agravaine didn't have magic. But also he worked for Morgana, so I don't really count him. If we would have had one antagonist that didn't have magic and was an actual threat without anyone who has magic, Like, he was alone on his own, no magic. I think that could have been quite interesting too, but that possibility wasn't explored, and maybe it could have been an interesting way. It would have been a way worth checking, but ultimately they didn't, at least not more than Agravaine. And as I said, Agravaine just doesn't work well. And as I also said before, the ending is not an ending. It's just, at least not a story ending. It's just like a season is missing. And I don't think we get a sixth season at any point. One thing that I could imagine maybe would be a remake somewhere in the future, and then we get an actual ending. But for now, we need to live with this ending that enraged everyone and can make up our own. Why not? Because if something in a show happens that we, as the viewer, don't like, we can just make our own thing out of it. Why not? And I think this is it. This was probably a mess, but that's fine. I am sure not everyone agrees with me. If you have thoughts, let me know. I am happy to read them. So, with this, I release you into the depths of the universe. Once again. See ya!